Right, gentlemen, today we are moving on with our fifth unit, and that is about the risk management processes. We'll talk about all the risk management processes we have. Naturally, this is not going to be in detail here because subsequently we will be covering each and every process in further detail. But right now, we will discuss about what the different processes are, and even before that, we will also discuss certain other things like what are the different types of risks and all. So the content would be, first of all, the learning objective of this module is to understand the role of the project risk management in the overall risk management perspective, role of project risk management in project management, and then the different project risk management processes, which include the plan risk management, identify risk, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis, risk response, implement risk responses, and ultimately monitor risk. Okay, before we can proceed ahead, we must understand there are two types of risks in corporate business management. I'm not specifically talking about the project risk, but corporate business risk because we are also part of our business venture. Our project is also part of a business. So, therefore, we must understand there are two types of basic corporate business management risks. One is called the business risk, and the other is called pure risk. Business risk is the one which we are very well aware of, that is kind of something can result in profit or loss. So that inherent chances of both profit or loss associated with the particular business endeavor, that is the business risk. So the business entities employ skilled staff to increase the chances of profit and reduce the chances of loss. Actually, effort of the organization and through their employees is that they should increase their benefit and increase their profit and reduce the chances of getting any kind of loss. So the essential purpose here is to maximize the loss, maximize the profits. The other kind of risk is a pure risk, which is also called insurable risk. Now this type of risk is always bad. This will always result in loss. This involves only a chance for loss and no chance for profit. So, insurable risk can be further subdivided into four categories. First of all, let us see what are these risks. There is a chance, there is a probability of getting something, meeting an accident. So when you will meet an accident, then some harm will come your way. What will you do when that harm comes? What kind of damage it can cause you? It could be a direct property damage or indirect property loss. So the direct property loss could be destruction of property by fire, flood, or windstorm, or etc. And indirect property loss is somewhat more subtle and involves extra expenses associated with the renting alternative temporary accommodation or equipment following its damage or destruction. Loss due to business interruption if operations cannot be continued because the replacement is not immediately available. So if there is some hazard, some situation of loss, the direct loss is the immediate damage which comes to you. Like if you meet an accident, you will have your car damaged. And the indirect property loss would be that you will be sued by the other driver and maybe you have to fulfill his losses as well. So this is on top of your direct damage. This is another damage which is coming your way. So you should not only be protected against the direct property loss, but also against the indirect property loss. Then there are liability losses and personal losses. Liability losses are that involve the chance of a member of the public filing a lawsuit for bodily injury, personal injury or damage, property damage against the contractor. So whatever you are producing, whatever your business is producing, the product of the business has has caused some damage to someone, and that person has sued you, and you may have to fill in a huge loss for that. That is some liability loss which has occurred to you. Then there could be personal loss, which involves injury to the employees, such as those contemplated by the workers' compensation laws. So in your factory, in your organization, your employees have certainly been, injured by something. Maybe you are doing a construction thing, and there is some wall which has collapsed, and some employees have been harmed with that. That is a personal loss. So this kind of loss, and all kinds of losses which are occurring to you, you are probably going to have some solution for that. You will guard against each one of these uncertainties. You see, we understand that all projects are uncertain. So looking at it only from the perspective of the project management, uncertainty is inevitable since projects are unique and temporary undertakings based on assumptions and constraints, and they are delivering project results to multiple stakeholders with different requirements. So naturally, you cannot satisfy all the stakeholders up to their desired requirements. But still you try. Still you are undertaking this challenge of unique and temporary undertaking, and not only that, you are having a lot many assumptions and constraints, but you are having a lot many stakeholders with very different requirements. So you are entering into a very dangerous zone. Project management tries to control the uncertainty by extra preparedness, by proactivity. They become more cautious. They come up with more structured approaches and techniques they use to, to cause caution into everything they are planning. So, such like cautions could be seen in estimation, during planning, during cost control, when you're doing the task allocations. Earned value analysis is a very good tool for being proactive and having a structured approach to dealing with the uh, three project objectives, monitoring and review meetings, etc. Each of these elements of project management has a role in defining or controlling the uncertainty which is inherent in the situation. Project risk management provides you an approach, a system, a way of addressing the problem. Project risk management provides you an approach by which uncertainty can be understood, assessed, and managed within the project. Because we are talking from the perspective of only the project management, we are not talking about the business management here. So whatever kind of occurrences could be there, whatever kind of uncertainties could be there, the very first thing is to properly capture them, know them, identify them, understand them, and be able to, you know, assess them as much in detail as possible, as if they can be properly managed. It forms an integral part of the project management. As we have already said, projects are uncertain, and effective project risk management is a critical success factor for the success of the project. If you have, project risk management is not mandatory. There are many people who do not care about project risk management, who do not care about earned value management, who do not care about project resource management, and still they are doing projects all around us. But naturally, their chances of success are affected by making these things optional or tailoring them out. So project risk management is definitely a critical success factor, and that will increase and enhance the chances of success if you are more proactive. For project management to be effective, project risk management must not be considered as optional or an additional overhead task. That is something I wanted to say, that although people do not consider it a necessary and mandatory thing to do in the project, they think that projects can be done without proper risk management, but they should not take it as optional, and they should be more proactive. So we must allocate some time for thorough planning and analysis, and therefore risk management can be done in more precise manner. Since many elements of project management addresses an inherent uncertainty, the interface between structured project risk management and other processes of project management needs to be clear. And we have yesterday explained about it, that risk management has to be integrated with all the other knowledge areas, and this integration would would happen while you are uh, doing the overall project management plan, developing the project overall project management plan. But risk is something common for each and every knowledge area. When you are identifying the risk, you are being proactive, you must identify from the perspective of every knowledge area. And later on, when all the risks have been identified and thoroughly analyzed, they could be made part of the overall project management plan. The outputs of project risk management should be taken into account within many of the project management processes. So there are many of the 49 processes of the project management will be affected by the project risk management. Impact of project risk management outputs. The outputs of this can impact estimating the resource requirements, cost or durations. So I hope you understand how many types of estimations are there. We have three types of estimation. We have the duration estimate, we have the cost estimate, and we have the resource estimate. And naturally, if you can go through the practice standards for project estimation, you would see that many of the tools in estimation, whether it is for cost, duration, or resource, are very similar to each other. Assessing the impact of proposed scope changes. Scope, if you do not cater it in a proper manner, it would cause scope creep. Scope creep is changes in scope which are brought in without any proper change request. This will happen, although you must be cautious about it, but this will happen due to certain pressures within the project. But as soon as you realize that there has been a scope creep, you should immediately take actions and move in a scope change request, as if that can be regularized, right? So you cannot live with a scope creep. You can't just say it is okay, scope has this creep and this is just manageable. It's not manageable. It has to be brought in through a scope change control. Planning and replanning, that is the progressive elaboration thing going. The forward strategy of the project, allocating resources to tasks and reporting progress to the stakeholders. If you are doing all of these things, then probably you are keeping everyone and everything abreast with the latest situation. None of these actions can be performed properly without a clear view of the risk involved. You see, I said you have risks in all of the knowledge areas, but at least look at in the resource requirements, especially in the scope creep case, in the case of planning or replanning, that is the progressive elaboration, allocating resources and reporting progress to the stakeholders. You see, we have actually addressed all of the project objectives, scope, time, and cost here. We have addressed all of the stakeholder concerns. So, if we can somehow look at these outputs, they probably will take care of all aspects. As I said, none of these actions can be performed properly without a clear view of the risk involved. Project management processes effectiveness is increased by using the information and results from project risk management. So risk management is directly contributing to the efficiency of project management processes. project risk management requires inputs from other project management processes, like when you are starting to identify the risks, you need to have the work breakdown structure that must have been created so far, and work breakdown structure uh, will guide me in identification of various risks. Not only the work breakdown structure, I would also be much more happier if I have the activity list, if I have the cost management plan, as if I can establish the cost estimates, and project schedule, as if I can find anything which has to be tweaked in the schedule from the risk perspective. And that is just not a story. Project schedule has the greatest risk because schedule is so sensitive that by a very little change, the whole behavior of the schedule is going to change. And when that changes, you have to take care of whatever possible risks could happen. It could change complete scenario with a slight change in schedule. So various instances of schedule will all be have to be addressed in a different manner. So I have to keep a record of all the instances, and I have to use certain tools like Monte Carlo analysis, like sensitivity analysis, decision tree analysis, and all that, just for adjusting the project schedule. The most sensitive part is the project schedule. Then we have assumptions. Where do we take assumptions? What are the assumptions? So I may turn to you for learning about what an assumption is. So what is your idea what an assumption is? Yes, please.
So an assumption is something that you consider true
Hmm.
without having sufficient proof about it.
Right. And why do we need to have these kind of assumption?
So sometimes when you don't have complete data available about something, then you assume something. But as you make more and more assumptions, you increase
Hmm.
your risk as well.
Right.
So
Right.
basically, you don't have enough information about something, so then you make assumption. But then you keep doing your assumption testing to
Mm.
see if the assumptions you made do they hold true or not.
Wonderful.
But having more and more assumptions on a project obviously makes it more risky.
Wonderful. Wonderful. You see, the if you will never have all the facts and figures to make all the decisions. When you are planning, and especially you are on a such a unique venture, you are doing you are getting into the project management, which is embedded with all the uncertainties. um, when you start planning, there are a lot many things which you can plan very thoroughly due to your previous experience and the expert advice given to you. But there will be certain black spots which cannot be planned due to lack of information. You do not have facts and figures to base your decision. In that case, we take an assumption. We assume a value which is not actually there, but we assume it to be true. We say that, okay, let us say the cost of a brick would be 5 rupees a brick, because I don't know. I have tried my level best to find out, but nobody told me how much will it cost. So I will base my estimate on this assumption of 5 rupees per piece of brick, and ultimately I will calculate everything. Later on, this assumption may be declared wrong or right even. So until and unless this assumption has been proven right, I cannot keep relying on it. So this is a potential hole for risk. So I have to have our, an eye on this risk, on this assumption, until and unless this becomes a fact. As soon as actual facts reveal the truth in front of me, I must replace the assumed value with the actual value, and thus the risk on that assumption would go away. But as long as this assumption remains an assumption, the fact is not confirmed, we will treat it as a risk. So assumption list is a very good input for identifying the risks. So all of these different sources are all important prerequisites for effective project risk management. So the responsibility of project risk is so pervasive that it is rarely given sufficient central attention. Not all risk events are independent. Total amount at stake on a project may be highly dependent upon series of interfacing events. Like you see, if something goes wrong, a lot many things are linked to it and everything starts going wrong. It like the cookie crumbles, everything falls. This is also related to the Murphy law. Anything you can think can go wrong will go wrong. So you must base your assumption on that. You must be prepared for the worst. What all can happen to me? What is the worst which can happen to me? So if you are prepared for the worst, you are prepared to handle any situation. A series of risk events frequently cross traditional functional responsibility boundaries, causing classic difficulty of coordination and rapid response, and can lead to disastrous consequences. So don't be complacent when you are dealing with risk. Go try to assume, try to understand that anything which can go wrong will go wrong in the worst possible way. Then there is some ultimate responsibility for identifying risks to a project, and their subsequent treatment must rest with the project sponsor. Now, this is the matter of responsibility. Who is ultimately responsible for the risk management in the project? Now, this is a sensitive topic. Normally, we understand that project manager must be responsible for that, or the team must be responsible for that. Risk and quality are two such areas which have to be taken the responsibility at the very highest level. If there is no attitude of the top level management, no commitment from the top level management for implementing risk management and quality management, no matter how good workers you have got, how efficient and certified professionals you have got, you will still not be able to meet the targets of risk management and quality management both. Number one, it has to be the sponsorship of the risk management and the quality management must be taken right at the top. They must take on the ultimate responsibility. Number two, everybody must take the responsibility in their area of performance about the risk and quality. So this is a general statement I am making, not exactly according to the risk management, but this is my personal experience also, that I have seen many organizations who have got a lot of money and a lot of effort going into maybe quality and risk management or risk management. They will hire people who are qualified. They will have a structure in which a lot of movement is going on and things like that. But the top level management is not really convinced that this is required. So they are not really serious about risk management or the quality management. Ultimately, what happens is that top level commitment with in absence of the top level commitment, the desired results are never achieved, because ultimate decision making will be from the top level management and they are not much bothered about quality or risk, and therefore no matter how efficient the staff is underneath, they will never get their requirements through. This happened to me with one of the organizations here in Islamabad, a very good organization of telecommunication. They used to produce the you know hardware for the telecom industry, and they were very efficient people, very effective people. They asked me to conduct a training on quality for them. And when I went to them and I met a person there who was heading the quality assurance. So I had some debate with him and asked him, why do you want, why are you requiring my services? to teach your people. He said, well, this is very important and all that, and he was qualified also and everything. But when I asked him, what is the say you have got in the organization for bringing the best of the quality, then he was speechless, because this was just because everybody was going for quality and they hired a quality assurance manager. Uh, Otherwise, the top level management was really not concerned if the quality is there or not. When I started teaching them, the first thing which came up was that people were saying that these things you are saying are good, but can you tell it to our bosses also? Because when we try to do these things, our bosses do not support us. The top level executives are not committed to quality management by themselves, and therefore the decisions required for bringing in good quality are never approved. You see how the problem rises. This is the way the problem arises. So that is exactly why I'm saying that these two areas, risk and quality, they are not only for the project management. Risk and quality are the two areas on operational management of the organization also. So if you really want these to be proactive and to bring in good quality, then top level management must be committed, must hold themselves ultimately responsible. So even for the project management now, I can confidently say who is the top level management for the project. Sponsor is the top level management for the project. The boss of the project manager is the sponsor. So sponsor must be held ultimately responsible for risk management. So ultimate responsibility for identifying risks to a project and their subsequent treatment and rest must rest with the project sponsor. The very threat posed to the successful achievement of project objectives should be sufficient reason for project sponsor to recognize this responsibility. Because if something goes wrong with the project objective, scope, time, and cost, the whole project is going to suffer. So he must be, this is the lifeline of the project. So to protect the lifeline of the project, he must be committed to the risk management. A particular case is a project leader must keep the project on schedule, must act with insufficient information to take decisions. Naturally, we won't have all the information all the time. We will be taking assumptions. Such risks must be calculated, not recklessly. The absence of requisite information must be clearly recognized. We must we must understand that we are not having all the information, and then collection of the information is either too costly or too time consuming or simply unavailable. So how much effort you should put into for the collection of information? Naturally, we have our restrictions, we have our limitations. We cannot go beyond the availability of time we have. So it is not an unlimited process. We have to do it in a specific amount, cost, time, and all that, and we cannot consume all that for risk management. So it is advisable to have a contingency plan prepared so that when the information or result to become available, there is a fallback position to turn to. So we must have alternatives open to us. We must have reserves. We must have contingencies. And uh, as it says, fallback plan, it is also called workaround. Workaround is something, as I mentioned yesterday, workaround is something which we will impose after a risk has implemented. That is again the fallback position, is just like the workaround plan. In research and development projects, unknowns that can turn into unpleasant surprises may include the technical solutions that do not work as expected, experiments that fail, and unanticipated byproducts or side effects, such as undesirable side effects of a new drug being eclipsed by an unanticipated superior product announcement by some other competitor, by an overriding patent application by a competitor, market research indicating lack of customer acceptance, escalating product development costs, product reliability, quality, and producibility difficulties. So all these things we must look into, and we must be able to, especially in the R&D projects, we must be looking in these dimensions to find what all can apply to us. And in R&D projects, how do we mitigate these risks? We conduct parallel development paths because R&D is a very different kind of a thing. In R&D projects, especially in pharmaceutical industry, a project is normally from 7 to 15 years long, very long projects. So if I have gone on a wrong path for say 10 years, then I change my path, I come to the fallback position or plan B, that will take another 10 or 15 years, and then again I fail, and then again. So we can't afford to go indefinitely. We can't have this kind of research going on which never ends. So it is always useful in R&D projects to identify the various different paths of development. This medicine can be developed in this way, this way, this way, or that way. So I have got four different paths. So what they do is they mobilize four different project teams working on each path of possibility simultaneously. Although you would say that will cost too much, yes, of course, but this will save a lot of time. So if three out of the four paths fail, so that much investment will save that much time. And the fourth path, which we have continued working and which had ultimately resulted in success, will take, say, 7, 8, or 10 years, and rest of the repetition which I had to go through after the failure of other path now will not be. So I will be saving a lot of time in that. So if one approach does not work, then another will. May cost more, of course, but may be worth it in order to maintain flexibility, reduce the overall risk, and reduce the elapsed development time. Looking at the types of risks with respect to uncertainty, as in project management, we recognize risks in these three categories. There are known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. Known knowns are those risks which we can conceive, we can think about them, we can know about them through our experience or the historical data. So there is no uncertainty about it. Those risks do exist, but naturally, I am not really certain about when that risk will occur. But I have a fairly good idea. For example, death is certain and obvious. Everyone has to die. Now, I don't know when I am going to die, but naturally, this could indicate certain things which I am doing. The way of my life could indicate that I am walking towards my death. I am on the danger zone. But at the same time, death can come any time. So this is not something which nobody knows. Everybody knows that everybody has to die someday. So this is a known known. Let's take another example. In Pakistan, we know that every year in a certain period of time, there is a threat of floods in Pakistan. Now, every year there is rise in water level. Sometimes it is more, sometimes it is less. Sometimes the damage is more, sometimes the damage is less. But we probabilistically can analyze and see how much dangerous the floods are in Pakistan. So this is again a known. I know the flood is a common happening in Pakistan, but if I know, then why should I not be preparing for it? I'm really amazed when every year when there is some situation of flood and there is so much of loss of life and property. Why is it happening? Are we blind or something? At all levels, the people who face this damage, who face this risk, they never prepare, they never learn from their experiences. They will again go there and live in those areas which will ultimately be flooded. And even when they know that this is the season when the flood will come, why they do not migrate from that place, even temporarily? Why don't they save their property and their life? Why do they wait for the very last moment as if they can die? Similarly, if I look at the government of Pakistan, Does the government of Pakistan does not know that these are the low-lying areas and these are the times when the flood is going to be there? So why should government not take actions, not enforce a kind of evacuation from that place? Again, is not understood. I, in my life, have served in many positions, like uh, flood control centers. Also, I have manned, and I know this fact that when water level uh, starts increasing, we do have a early warning. We know how much cusics of water has been released from what point, and in how many hours it will reach what point, and which all are the areas which will go underwater. We know everything. And to further brush up this thing, we could use geographic information system, and we can do simulations and see which exactly are the areas which are going to be underwater. And you see, this thing is so sure that we can do the evacuation and we have enough time. This takes about 4 to 6 hours or 8 hours to get water from top of the mountains down to this place. And we know that this thing is coming, and we can have ample time to evacuate these people. Still, I am at a loss to understand why are we not doing that. So these are the known knowns which we do not treat them at all. We are ignorant. We close our eyes to that. We are risk averse kind of a people. Then there are other types of risks which are called known unknowns. In these kinds of risks, they can be somehow identified, but we are not really much sure about them. We have a lot of uncertainty in them, but at least we can recognize them. Now, we may not be able to understand what to do with them, how much damage they are going to cause, but at least I can identify them. These are called known unknowns. So this is an identifiable uncertainty. Know that they exist, but we do not know how they will affect us. For example, our electricity bill, we know we will get it next month, but do not know exactly how much. How much will be the electricity bill? So this is something, the cost may have risen, and lot many factors affect, and it may be a complete surprise to me. We know that cancer exists, but we do not know if we shall fall victim to it. This is again a known unknown. So cancer, we have seen people suffering from cancer and dying from cancer, but will I be the one? I don't know. So this is a known unknown risk. I know this exists. I don't know it will occur to me or not. But as far as the death was concerned, I knew this will happen to me anyways. So I have to take whatever action, whatever measures in that case. And the third category is unknown unknown. This is something which is unidentifiable uncertainty. I, in my sane mind, am unable to conceive that this thing can happen to me. And what is this thing? I don't know. I can't even identify this fact. This is an item or situation whose existence we cannot even imagine. This is out of our knowledge. Like you see, before the first case was reported of AIDS, it was a complete unknown. Nobody ever heard about what it is. But once it was recognized, it became unknown. You see, when it was identified, it became a known unknown. But before it no, ever nobody anybody knew about it, this was a unknown. So we can identify many risks. The most probable or most certain risks we can identify are the known knowns. Next level, if we dig deeper and think more, we can identify a lot many known unknowns. And unknown is the one we will never be able to identify. Now, this is not enough that this is an unknown and I should not even try to find it. When you dig deeper and you do a lot of soul searching and identification, sometimes the unknown unknowns can become known unknowns. So this all depends upon my effort. If I dig deeper, I may increase the number of known unknowns by my research. So this is my attempt. I will always endeavor as a risk manager to dig deeper and find more risks, and thus exploring the unknown unknowns and making them known unknowns. I hope you understand my point. There are other ways to look at uncertainties. There are points to be considered here. The spectrum of risk events will vary between risks. A risk a event which is considered as a risk in one project might not be a risk for another project. Why is it so? That is because the volume, the capacity, the complexity of the risk, and especially the stakeholder attitude of risks are different. And therefore, in one project, you may be very cautious about certain things, and in another project, you can take that much beating, and there is no problem if these small little things can occur. Projects are launched to take advantage of opportunities. Opportunities and threat, they go together. By their very nature, projects are risky business. Once all the risks seem to have been thought of, there may still be few remaining. So you cannot ever be sure about that you have recognized all the risks, no matter how deeply you explore, but there will always be something left as an unknown unknown. Unknown unknown will always be left behind. But more you put in effort, you are trying to bring more unknown unknowns into light and bringing them known unknowns or known knowns. So that is all my effort. If I have got enough time, I will try my level best to dig deeper and find more risks. With respect to the impact of the risk, we can look at the project objectives. Their impact of the risk is on what? In the whole project management, the impact is on the baselines. And my project objectives are scope, time, and cost. And naturally, the subsequent fourth objective can be considered as quality, but we do not call quality as a specific project objective just because of the reason that quality does not have a baseline. Otherwise, quality is as important as scope, time, and cost. So some people include the quality in objectives, some don't. But anyways, we do understand that scope, time, and cost are the three objectives. And by the way, quality is inclusive in scope. When we are considering the scope risk, we are actually also taking care of the quality risk. So, whatever you want to call it, but these are the four things which will be impacted. And if something is impacted in scope, time, or cost, then it tantamounts to be called as a risk. Anything which does not bother any of these project objectives, that is not a risk of the project. You see, if there is a risk that a person will get late, but by his getting late, nor the scope of the project is being changed, neither the schedule, cost, or quality is being affected. So why are we worried about it? So let that be handled by the project manager. This is not something to be brought for the change request. This is not to be considered as a risk at all. So risk is all about the impact on the project, and impact it can only be caused through the project objectives. Many identifiable risks will have an impact on two or more of these areas, particularly both schedule and cost. This leads to significant overlapping and potential double counting when it comes to making offsetting provisions. So that risk will be identified from the scheduling as a schedule risk also, and as a cost risk also. So I must understand that the risk is the same. The effect it has got impact on both schedule and cost. So I have to be really very careful when I am defining and designing the statement of the risk. Then looking at some other aspects with respect to nature, there could be discrete one-time events or time-scaled events. One-time events are those that the risk which is likely to occur only once in a while. like fire or theft. And time scale risk is that will happen after periodic breaks, periodically, maybe after every year, maybe after every 30 years or 40 years or 60 years. So which has a probability of occurring again and again after a definite interval. That is called a time scale risk. So discrete one time risks are there and time scale risks are there. This is one way of looking at the risks from with respect to nature. Then we can have deliberately chosen risks and versus latent risks. Deliberately chosen risks are correctly identifying project objectives for a venture opportunity. So we are focusing on the project objectives and we are trying to identify specific risks related to those project objectives. And latent risk is inherent in a situation or product. Changes in market conditions are a fault mechanical part. So latent risk is not in your control and deliberately chosen risk is in your control. So you probably can focus your energy in identifying the risk to the deliberately choosing risk in a specific area, but there might be some latency in some of the risks which is not dictated by your choice. Then we have sufficiently remote risks and catastrophic risks. Sufficiently remote risks are like the change in political direction. That may or may not happen, but that is a very remote chance. A catastrophic risk is financial collapse of the whole system. So the damage is too big, the probability may be very, very low. This is a catastrophic risk. So these are various risks which we discussed with respect to the nature of the risk. Project risk management processes uh, describe a structured approach for understanding and managing risk on a project. Risks only exist in relation to the project objectives. This you must have realized in the previous uh, slides also, and earlier also we have focused on that. Our risk, number one, our risk is a risk until it occurs. Once it occurs, it becomes an issue. This is no more a risk. That was the first lesson. Second is, a risk is a risk until and unless it is affecting one of the project objectives. If there is no impact on any of the project objectives, this is not called a risk. So it is important to define clear objectives at the very start, as if we can see that these objectives are at risk or not. And naturally, I am referring to the scope, time, and cost. Different projects are exposed to different levels of risk. So each step in the project risk management process should be scalable to meet the varying degree of risk. Talking about scalability, scalable elements of the process include available resources, they can be scaled up and down, methodology and processes, tools and techniques, supporting infrastructure, review and update frequency, and reporting requirements. So these things can be scaled up or down. We can include risk methodologies and certain processes to deal with the risk better. We have got better tools and technique. We have got supporting infrastructure to deal with the risk. You can have the review and updation of the frequency and reporting requirements. So these are all the scalable elements within a risk management process. Implementation precondition. For a successful project risk management implementation, it is important to have a clear understanding of the risk threshold. Now we talk about risk threshold. And from where this risk threshold comes is this is defined by the key stakeholders view on acceptable levels of risk. The key stakeholders, how do they assume the risk to be affecting them? If they think that this much risk is okay with us, we don't care. We can bear this much risk. So probably the risk threshold will be set higher. But if they are very sensitive about their level of risk, the risk might be set at a very minute level. The risk threshold will go down, and therefore anything which is beyond the risk threshold will be identified as risk. So two projects in which two different stakeholders are viewing similar to kind of projects, one has a higher threshold, one has a lower threshold, then the one with lower threshold will have more risks identified. And many risks which are identified in this the case will not even be applicable to the other project because that does not come under that threshold. The other threshold is too big. So therefore, uh, we must have a clear understanding of the risk threshold, stakeholders' view of the acceptable level of risks, as well as a framework against which the identified risk can be assessed. How are you going to do the detailed assessment of each and every risk? So that framework will define how we are looking at the qualitative and quantitative analysis. We have to be absolutely very clear about how we are going about it. So we start with an initiation step. Project management process always starts with an initiation step to ensure common understanding and agreement of the team and the stakeholders on the approach and parameters that will be applied in managing risk in this project, as well as the scope and objectives of the project. Project risk management activities, resources, and attention should be appropriate to the project since different projects warrant different levels of risk management application. So, project risks are going to be different for different projects. Main actions to provide the required tailoring are as follows. Number one, define those objectives against which the risk will be identified. Now, previously I have said that there are three objectives: scope, time, and cost, and you can also sometimes include the quality, the fourth objective. But there are three objectives. But now I am going deeper and I am asking which out of these three objectives or four objectives is most important to you. Again, I have to turn back to the stakeholder and ask him which objective is you are more concerned with. So naturally, our focus will be more towards that. We are more sensitive about, say, time, and we don't care much about money. So probably the risks related to cost will not be catered much. Whereas we are having a very low threshold for risks in the area of schedule. Therefore, all our attention would be focused on that. So this is not only the matter of just the three or four objectives, but which of those objectives have to be focused on. Define how the elements of the project risk management process will be scaled for this project. We do generally understand what we do in risk management, but how are we going to apply and tailor it according to the needs of this specific project and define risk thresholds, risk tolerances, and the assessment framework. The outputs from this initial step should be properly documented, communicated to all, and reviewed by all the stakeholders because these are the stakeholders who are going to vet it. And they must have a common understanding of whatever we have developed and they must be on board. We cannot keep them in dark. So they must have common understanding of the scope and objectives of the project risk management process. The document should be formally approved at a senior level. You see, we are keeping all the stakeholders abreast. First of all, we ask them, what do you want? What is your tolerance? What is your, I have determined the attitude of the stakeholders about risk. I have determined their thresholds for various objectives of the project. And then I have documented all of this in a risk management plan, and then I have shown it to all the stakeholders as if they and we and they are on the same page, and they approve that document and they agree with us. They are on board with us. Once the scope and objectives are agreed, that is the time when we start identifying the risk. So the first step we just carried out was the development of a thorough risk management plan. It is not only um, identifying for the identification of the risk. This is, as it was mentioned there, this is how we are going to establish the thresholds, how we are going to establish the attitudes of the stakeholders, uh, what are the which of the objectives have got more importance than others, and how much is the weightage of these objectives, and then we will also define in the risk management plan how to do the risk identification, what tools are to be used in that, how to assess the risks in qualitative and quantitative way, what tools and what techniques and what methodologies are going to be used, how to respond to these risks, what are the allowable risk responses, and so on and so forth. So all of what is going to be ultimately happening in the area of risk management has already been defined and agreed by the stakeholders, and now we have moved on to the practical identification of the risks. This is start identification of the risks process. So be careful to distinguish genuine risks from non-risks, and that is exactly what I taught you earlier, the format of cause, risk, effect. Try to differentiate, understand and differentiate between what is cause and what is effect, what is problem and what is issue. Probably I have deliberated a lot on that, and you have a very fair idea what these terms are like. But if you understand these terms properly, only then we can actually be able to identify the risks properly. One or more techniques should be selected as appropriate for meeting the needs of the specific project. The aim is to expose and document all knowable risks. That is number one priority. All knowable risks must be identified. If I am careless, I may even forget about some of the knowable risks. This we can't afford. We should be able to capture all the knowable risks, recognizing that some risks will be inherently unknowable. So, and others will emerge later in the project. I am uh, uh, I am comfortable with this idea that I cannot capture all the risks, but although it is my responsibility to capture all the knowable risks, but also, if possible, all the known unknowns also must be identified. And if I have enough time, if I can dig deeper, I can even make it possible to dig out some of the unknown unknowns. This all depends upon how much time and effort you are ready to put in. General considerations for identifying the risks. The emergent nature of risk requires the project risk management process to be iterative in nature. Repeating the identifying risk process in order to find risks which were not evident earlier in the project. So we'll be repetitively keep doing the identification process, and we keep processing those risks. Input should be sought from a wide range of project stakeholders where identifying risks, since each will have a different perspective on the risk facing the project. So that is exactly very good that those stakeholders from which have different perspective, which have different views, I am getting back to them, and I am continuously in touch with them, and they are helping me identify more risks. So everybody is encouraged to give feedback. As much risks I can identify, I will, but naturally, all the risks identified are not actually carried forward because we will pass them through certain qualitative and quantitative processes, and ultimately, there would be many risks which we will disregard because they are not sane at all. We can have the historical records and project documents should also be consulted. All identified risks are recorded. They must be written down into some document which is called the risk register, and every risk must be assigned a risk owner. A risk owner is designated for each identified risk. It is the responsibility of this risk owner to manage the corresponding risk. Whatever the risk has been given to this risk owner, he is solely responsible from the beginning till end of that risk through all of the subsequent project risk management processes. So this risk owner may have some team who will help him do his job. But this is not the only job of risk owner that he will be looking after that risk. He will be actually performing some other duties on project as well. He may be the supervisor of doing the wall construction, and all the risks in the work package of wall construction would probably be under the ownership of this person, this supervisor. And there might be certain actions which have to be taken in case that risk occurs. So the team he has, out of that team, some people will be assigned as risk action takers. So risk owner may have a team of his own who are the people who will actually take certain actions in case that uh, risk has to be mitigated. Then evaluating risks. If you can give me a break of about 5 minutes, I'll get back to you and then we can talk more about it. Is it all right?
So, sir.
Okay, I'll just be back.